This rhetoric is 180 degrees at odds with reality. The Obama administration made available up to $23.7 trillion in loans, guarantees, and direct cash infusions to the big financial institutions. Its number one priority has been to rescue these institutions, which play a central role in the world capitalist system and serve as the principal guardians of the wealth of the ruling elite. Obama commissioned the Feinberg Report to provide political cover as the economic crisis deepens. American society is heading into an unprecedented social and political crisis, beginning with a winter in which foreclosures, evictions, utility shutoffs, and spreading homelessness will unfold against the backdrop of record bonuses on Wall Street. The White House is also supplying a bit of rhetorical ammunition to its liberal defenders, such as The Nation magazine. They are increasingly being discredited by their praise for the progressive character of the new administration, even as Obama betrays all of his election year promises and, in all essentials, continues the policies of Bush and the Republicans. Wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, bailouts for the wealthy, wage and benefits cuts for workers, attacks on democratic rights. Obama's comment about the free enterprise system rewarding hard work has been echoed by media apologists and spokesmen for the bankers, who are bemoaning the supposed chilling effects of the token restraints on pay. A worried New York Times wrote, "Pay experts said the plan which emerged Wednesday could lead the departure of the very executives needed to return the firms to health, a prerequisite to repaying taxpayer support. Neither from the White House nor in the press is there an examination of what these individuals have done, what heroic labor they have performed that is worth incomes in the 7, 8, and even 9 digits. These financial parasites produce no real value. On the contrary, these are people who are largely responsible for the greatest financial collapse since the 1930s, one in which their personal greed and recklessness played a significant role." And then it skips down. As the Times account demonstrates, to the extent that the new regulations have any substance beyond their public relations value, their purpose is to curb the speculative excesses of a few bank executives and the larger interests of the financial aristocracy as a whole. The working class has no interest in supporting Obama's fig leaf of pay restraint for the banks, which will be cited as justification for even more draconian attacks on the wages and benefits of workers. And then it goes into territory that I don't agree with, but it says the working class must fight for not fight for a reformed capitalism, but the abolition of the profit system, reorganization of economic life to serve the needs of the vast majority of humanity, those who work for a living. This means building an independent political movement of the working class based on socialist internationalist program to establish a rationally planned and democratically controlled world socialist economy. Now, in a rebuttal, I wrote to this. I wrote, "Socialism would invite more corruption. Despite the good intentions of those pushing that system, any plan that tries to eliminate greed is unrealistic and will only usher in new schemers and tyrants as the old ones are kicked out. Reality is that even in societies where everyone is supposedly equal, there will always be those who try to buck the system and exploit their peers by controlling those in government. By having the government involved in business as socialism would have, it only provides more incentive for this kind of behavior. Only by following the Constitution and the principles of real free market capitalism could we take away the power of government to interfere in the economy and protect the fat cats who oppress the working class. Equality is only achieved when people are allowed to succeed on their own merits and enjoy the rewards of hard work. In a true free market, there would be no banks too big to fail, because they would fail a lot sooner or be forced to abide by the rules that everyone else plays by. Bad decisions would not be dismissed by government bailouts, and the well-to-do leeches would no longer be subsidized." So while the socialists writing this very good article, meanwhile, their solution would just enhance the problem. And if anyone wants to rebut that, feel free to. Right, and I want to close this episode with one last article I found to be very good. It was posted on October the 20th and written by Kevin Carson for the Center for a Stateless Society, "A Useful Guide to Freeing Your Mind." A few years ago, the Springdale, Arkansas school system constructed a second high school. The first week it was open for classes in the fall, I saw the first spirit stickers with the team mascot. Here was a school created entirely from scratch, and the team's name and mascot similarly created by a committee of middle-aged white men in suits. And a bunch of teenagers were already demonstrating their loyalty to it in only a week's time. It's about like that team of TV execs on The Simpsons creating the Poochie character. Wow, he's got attitude. Just look at those sunglasses. This is typical. From our early childhood, most of us are taught to feel loyalty to institutions in whose agendas we have no say and whose leaders are utterly unaccountable to us. Our lives are almost completely governed by a cluster of large, centralized, hierarchical, bureaucratic institutions, with the state at their center, over which we have almost no control. Even the ones that are formally democratic, like governments, are in fact run mostly for the benefit of connected insiders. Butler Schaefer's distinction between organizations and institutions is useful here. It's possible to be the former without being the latter. If an organization is an instrument by which its members pursue their own purposes, an organization becomes an institution when it exists primarily for its own ends, or rather the ends of those running it, and treats its members and clients as a means to those ends. The management of large institutions, thanks to being directly a part of the state system of power, or indirectly a part of it by being in an industry, which is to some extent cartelized by the state, is insulated both from accountability and from the consequences of its own decisions. Hierarchy is a tool for shifting effort and consequences downward, and benefits upward, and getting powerless people to do things that they have no rational interest in doing for its own sake. From this follow several general principles which it's useful to keep in mind in your dealings with institutions. 1. The real purpose of any large bureaucratic organization, as opposed to its publicly avowed mission, reflects the interest of those running it. For example, schooling bears the same relation to learning that the job bears to productive work. Some learning may take place in a school and some productive work at the job, but they're only an incidental side effect of the primary function of the institution, which is to serve the interests of those who control the circumstances under which learning and work are permitted to take place. Number 2, the rules mainly serve the interests of those who make the rules. The cultural apparatus, the mainstream press, the schools, etc., treats the rules as some neutral framework for promoting the general welfare, with government officials and the management of large organizations functioning as overgrown parent figures, making sure everyone shares their toys, plays nice, and gets along. This assumption is reflected in goo-goo material like Why Mommy is a Democrat, and the soccer mom politician's fondness for the phrase, work hard and play by the rules. Number 3. Even when institutional management means well, the rules are still likely to be almost entirely counterproductive, simply because those making them are so out of touch with reality. The main people who understand the real effect of the rules are those doing the actual work, who experience them in operation. But hierarchies are very bad at transmitting accurate information upward. As R.A. Wilson put it, nobody tells the truth to a man with a gun. In the old USSR, there were rules everywhere, and the system survived as long as it did because everybody ignored them. The same is true of the typical government agency or large corporation. The system in Brazil couldn't have survived without people like Harry Tuttle. Get over the assumptions that the real purpose of an organization has anything to do with what its mission statement says, or that there is any virtue in obeying the rules, when the rules are not made by freely cooperating equals based on their own free judgment. Free your mind. Well, that's going to conclude another episode of the America 20XY Week in Review. Remember, eternal vigilance is always the price of freedom. God bless you, and God bless America. Good night.